Hey, everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
Then I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
Flip, the flip, the flippity, flippity, flop, UnSpun.
Whatever will we talk about?
Oh my gosh. Well, I to be honest, I don't have anything else to talk about today because I have been drawn into the big park board debate. I'm everywhere talking to media because I guess I'm the only one who's willing to talk about it. I'm not sure about certainly being supportive of the idea.
Right.
I think this is not a shocker to most people, although it was a shock to the people who called me asking them to help them with their anti-campaign. I said, you're not listening to UnSpun, are you?
This is it, right? I'm going to be mushy middle, but let's set it up. Let's set it up so that people who have no idea what we're talking about right here. Park board has been a flashpoint for a long time, and we could talk about bike lanes in Stanley Park. We can talk about the lack of maintenance at some parks. We're just going to let it go wild. We're going to let it go wild. Just the properties that are controlled by this entity that is unique in Canada. Park board is part of the Vancouver Charter. It's an elected board that manages our 251 parks, I think, or properties throughout Vancouver. It's something like that. Close quote.
14 rangers to take care of them.
Right. Budgets that they work with their own budget, a budget that must be approved by city council, but it's a separate entity. And we have seen over the last number of years, I'll say as long as we've been doing this podcast, what episode of UnSpun are we doing right now?
235, I think 236.
Right. Many. We're 5 years. We're long time. We're into our 5th season. We've been talking about the park board since day one and almost every day in between. So there have been many frustrations about it, the bureaucracy about it. Every time we run up against something, the answer to it is, well, it's part of the Vancouver Charter. And when our current mayor decided to run against our former mayor to take over office in City Hall, one of the things he ran on was getting rid of the park board. Now you take it from there, what you said when Ken Sim threw his hat into the mayoral ring, and he was like, that's it, I'm going to abolish the park board. You said what?
Well, I said two things. One was that very risky to do that because of the rabid park board supporters. They are a strong advocacy, unconnected kind of group, but they're connected in one thing, and that's their passion for park board and passion for an elected park board, but also thinking, I think the majority of people are sick and tired of the park board. So probably a good move on his part when he made that announcement. But I thought, risky, but I thought it would certainly distinguish himself in a way that would help him. I think in the election that was coming up, and at that point, about 10 months away.
So that was I remember it so vividly because I'm like, wow. I mean, everything you've taught me, George, is you can't just snap your fingers as mayor and say, okay, we're done here. What is the process that has now been rather abruptly for some announced by Mayor Ken Sim that in fact he is going to request that the province modify the Vancouver Charter and remove park board? How does this all unfold here? Give us the play-by-play on what's happening.
Yeah, and it's a bit confusing. And I asked John Cooper, former park board commissioner and park board chair, probably the one good year of park board that we had for the last 15 years when John was the chair there.
Yeah.
Because he actually got some stuff done. And then he was ousted by his own party. Anyway,
he saved the Bloedel Conservatory single-handedly.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't say that, but he certainly was a major part of the team. He's very kind with sharing the fame. So yeah, it's a bit complicated, but Vancouver has its own charter. For those who don't understand, there's a municipal charter, a municipal act, and then there's the Vancouver Charter, which is weird in its own right, but it actually works quite well on some levels because, for example, sprinklers in buildings in Vancouver is something that we've had since the early 1970s that was put into the charter by request by the city. I don't even know if it's, I don't think maybe it's in the municipal charter now. I'm not even sure, but if you look in Vancouver, you can't build a building without sprinklers. That saved lives. It saved buildings. It's been a great thing. So that's one of the benefits. We actually move faster when we would get things done as opposed to waiting. We still have to get the province to approve changes to the charter, but we can be more nimble about things that are reactive in order to get stuff done for the people of the city. So But the park board also has to follow the charter as well. It's embedded as part of the charter in Vancouver. Now, the complicated part here is somebody has to ask the province if they want something changed in the charter.
Right.
My understanding was I thought it had to be the park board that would say, we dismantle us. And that's kind of the thinking I had believed. But now, as we've learned, no, the city can do that too. And that's what the city has done. They've put a motion together and they've said to the province, let her rip. Let's tear this sucker down and not have an elected park board. Still have a parks and recreation department, like every other city has, but a park
before
board
we keep going for before we keep going forward. I think for the non-political nerd, we're nerds, because you had always said it would take having a majority on the park board, a super majority, in fact, on the park board, in order to get rid of the park board. And then when ABC was elected with a super majority, and there are, more than enough ABC park board commissioners to all vote together to say, we're done here. And so for Ken Sim to really do what Ken Sim said he wanted to do, and then he pulled back on that. At first he was like, I'm getting rid of the park board. And then people were like, what? And he was like, well,
he flipped.
And then there were a whole bunch of ABC commissioners now around the park board table. So he could, one would assume, say to his teammates, sorry, that's a bad pun when there's another party called team.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Right. We'll get there in a second. I know I was a little foreshadowy there. But Ken Sim, one would think maybe as mayor, as the leader of ABC, would be able to have a conversation with his park board commissioners and say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do that. I don't know what then. Just one sec. Because there's a question in here. I know it's long and involved, but I'm trying to bring,
you're right on track. You're like
trying to bring people with me because they maybe don't know what I didn't know that you've taught me that is happening now. Whether you agree with it or not, this is what's happening, right? So I would have assumed or thought that the mayor and councillors and commissioners all on the ABC team would come together and discuss what the plan might be. And some would then maybe voice. Basically, it would be, you need your caucus to be whipped, right? Like you need your, as you said, in federal politics, you have to have everybody on side, even if they disagree with, right? So then this press conference happens, or it gets leaked that this is going to happen, and then it happens, and then you hear from park board commissioners who are like, I basically got an email from the mayor's chief of staff saying, basically, you're fired.
Yeah.
Like that was weird. Was that not weird?
Very unpolitically, very obviously a lot of stuff happened that we don't know, that we can guess at. And I'm going to make some assumptions here. I
want this. Now I want the story. Now it feels like we're set up for the soap opera. Bring it, George.
Yeah. I think we all know how Ken Sim felt about the park board, because he said it 2 years ago, how he felt about the park board, that he wanted to remove it, to dismantle it. Then he flipped, which is never good to politics, especially when you're running for office. That show weakness on his part. To flip like that. We've seen that happen provincially, and it's bad. That whole, Christy Clark won the election, because of flippy floppy competition. So flipping's never good in politics. So that was sort of a sign of weakness. Luckily for him, his competition was terrible, so he killed it in the election. He just walked away with all the majority, as you said. So I just can't imagine a scenario where he would have made a promise to these guys that he would keep the park board. Why would he make that promise? But he must have. However, what he should have said, or what I would have done, and I said it this morning on Mike Smith on CKNW, is what he should have said, well, no, because they're saying I was promised I'd be a commissioner for the 4 years. And
Brendan Bastiovansky did. Brendan went on record saying, I'm shocked, I'm stunned, I'm disappointed, all of the things, because Ken Sim looked me in the eye and told me that I would be a park board commissioner for 4 years, period.
Yeah, and Ken Sim could have said, no, you'll still be a commissioner. You're just not going to be a paid commissioner anymore. You'll be on the park board committee that will oversee the administration of the blah blah blah. He could have come up with some way that would have, and then he would have said, well, why are you in this, for the money then? Is that why you went into politics? And that's how he could have spun that, but he didn't go that route because something else must have happened. Clearly, these guys were they care about the park board. We know people care about the park board. We know people that are passionate about the park board, and I just don't know these people that I've never any of those ABC people, to be honest, I'd never met or heard of before. They had never, I mean, I don't know about you, if you've ever interviewed them or if they had ever shown themselves as big park board people. I'd never, maybe I missed them somewhere, but I'd never met them or heard of them before.
Not before they were elected.
You know,
I did know a little bit about Brendan Basketvansky. I knew a little bit about because he's a Mariloma and my dad's a Mariloma, so I understood, and he plays rugby. And so
had he ever showed passion to the park board to you?
Not in a way that I would be like, this guy's all about parks. You know, I hadn't heard his name associated with parks before. But
so it's interesting that they are now. And you know, when these guys were elected last year, we talked about this. I think we talked about this, about now's a chance to make that move that Ken Sim knows. We know how he really feels. He's just won a super majority. Now we kind of, maybe this new park board with this massive majority will put this forward as a motion. And I believe that conversation probably started happening at that time. And Ken Sim was trying to win them over and trying to say, look, it's just not working. It's not working. They did the revenue report, which we talked about.
Park board commissioners make like 20 grand a year for their trouble.
It's a good paid volunteer board.
It's a good paid volunteer board. So about $10 an hour, right? It's about $10 an hour
if you go to all the events.
Nothing to sneeze at, though. I mean, but you get to feel like you're doing something good and you're serving your community. But it's not like it's not like these guys are like, I'm going to lose my 100 grand a year and my, And
that's not where the savings are either, really. That's not the big money saver. We can get into that in a bit. But so I just think that there might, so from an ABC point of view, obviously something fell off the wheels fell off the old ABC bus on this issue. Couldn't get them on board, couldn't promise them things that they would make them stay in line. And so now they've all three of them, which is out of the four. That puts the majority into independents and is the other guy Green?
Yeah.
So we have 4 to 3 now on park board. So that's 3. There's whatever they had. What other vote? 6 of them. Anyways, there's 4 to 3 is ABC. So, or is the non-ABC people. So now you ask the question, what's going to happen now?
Yeah.
But
we didn't know, or I didn't know, that the mayor and council could go to the province to say.
I didn't know that either.
If that was something that they just discovered they could do, why the hell hasn't somebody done that sooner? Would be the other side of my moderate self, right? Like, I believe that how this was done, if we have a clear picture of sort of how it went down, that gives me the icks. However, I've been very vocal in how I think the park board has been a fairly constant and consistent failure over the last decade, with the exception of John. And I put Tricia Barker in there as well. Very much passionate about parks and access for seniors and affordability for those who might not be able to.
Yeah, focused on the job at hand.
Yeah, and that's not partisan politics for somebody who's like, oh, look at you, you're all about this part. I don't. So don't. I'm actually looking at it as a born and raised Vancouverite who absolutely uses and loves our parks. And I am appalled at the lack of due diligence and hard work. Roll up your sleeves, get it done, make it good quality, right? Like, and it's not like it's like, ooh, the world, everybody's having trouble with parks. No, just here. Just in Vancouver. The parks in Richmond are fine. The parks in Ladner are fine. The parks in Tawasin are fine. The parks in Surrey are fine. The parks in Poco are fine. Shall I continue? No, it's a Vancouver problem. It's a Vancouver problem because when I listen to what the park board is talking about, they're not talking about making sure that the grass is cut at David Lamb Park. They're talking about how they need to change the climate on a global scale. No, that's not your job. Your job is to take care of our parks. And by the way, our medians in this city are considered parks. When last year we couldn't see around a goddamn corner, 2 years ago, sorry. Yeah. 2 years ago, we couldn't see around a corner because the grass was 5 feet tall on our medians because, we're going to let it grow wild because bees. I'm like, ugh. Okay. End rant. So that's why I support the idea. And I think this is really important as well. You saw it was Jordan Armstrong's poll on Twitter, I think you were saying.
Yeah, I tweeted it. Yeah. I know. I mean, it was like 66% supporting the idea of removing. I mean, obviously unscientific. And I tweeted at Mario Canseco saying, "Hey, buddy, do a poll, public poll." And just before, because I want to move on to the funding here, and I think there's two. First of all, ABC is this is and I think we'll get into a little bit on the politics later, but. This fact that they couldn't keep their caucus in order, you touched on that. They couldn't keep them whipped. This is not good for ABC.
No.
What was surprising to me in this announcement is that when he was asked questions about the budget, he really couldn't, the mayor, he really couldn't address some of the things. If it was me, and I was his communications person, and we've talked about this, and we are taxpayers in the city, I'm sick of seeing these. Yeah, exactly.
How many?
Cheers.
But how many have quit now? 500.
I mean,
by the way, if you're wondering what the blue sludge is, it's because I'm painting.
I thought you had a Slurpee or margarita.
I wish.
Yeah.
Pass me
so we think, okay, well, I think I brought this up last week about just the streets alone, the streets budget for Park Board, because they did that revenue report, but they didn't do an expense report. And so in regards to it, but it's in the budget, their budget, which they just got presented by the Park Board. They can look at there and see how much money they spend on the streets. And, it's millions. They have 20 kilometers, I think, of streets in the parks. And, parks and streets, you don't. And so why are they even have a streets crew? Why do they have all these staff? How many, why that makes no sense. City has 2,000 kilometers of streets in the city or something like that. And have a really good, competent crew. Why would the parks have its own team, its own staff, its own union? It's crazy. Yeah. Its own engineering team, its own this, its own that. It's nonsense. And so, but the mayor didn't at this presser. If it was me, I would say, okay, here's the deal. There's the politics, which is we all know is crazy. Nobody can disagree with that. It's been nuts. Look at our parks. They need help. Look at he did bring that
160,000 trees need to be taken out of Stanley Park before spring because of the looper moth problem that was not addressed for the last number of years. 160,000 trees just in Stanley Park need to be removed.
Bad management.
That I would have kept saying that. I would have, if I was his comms person, I would say you stand up there and you point to Stanley Park and say, you know what? I'm taking this back because this would not have happened had it not been for them. And I would have let everybody talk about 160,000 trees. True or not, because that's politics.
He did try that. It didn't fly though. He did try that. He did try to he pointed out the tree thing and blamed it on anyways. It's an absolute example of incompetence. But I would have said, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save taxpayers $50 million.
Yeah.
I'm going to find there's going to be 50 million, I'm just guessing on the number, but probably 50 million.
He could have guessed it.
I mean, just on the common staff alone there, the engineering department, folding in, gardening, putting it all under city engineering, and that alone, fixing the seawall.
Because there are crews with all of those things that are part of the city already. It's not like you're creating another arm of the city, right? Like that's the part that I would have keyed in on as well.
Absolutely. And so that represents 4% of taxes. I'm going to probably be able to save 4% in taxes, people. Maybe not this year, but once I get this approved next year, I'm going to come back with a budget and probably a break even, like a 0% increase, or stuff like that.
Something.
Give me
Make
something.
A promise. Yeah.
And then you'd have a real tough time getting people saying, yeah, this is a bad idea. But we're kind of left hanging right now on the financial. And we have a party that's actually produced two crappy budgets that are like, what in the world? How do we trust these guys with money at all right now?
Us, Calvin.
Yeah.
While you're explaining the money piece and that we're talking about Park Board, within all of this, the budget, as we discussed last week, dropped. Not the greatest news for Vancouver citizens who live in Vancouver. But nobody's really talking about the increase in property tax that's happening right now because everybody's so into what's happening with Park Board. So there's a little bit of cover, right? Like there's
right. Good one. I didn't think about that. It's a good point. Yeah, but of course, what's happening is we know, and there was a press conference this morning up at Blodell, just by coincidence, at the exact same time, or it was yesterday. There were John Cooper. Anyways, there's this movement, as I mentioned earlier, that's happening at the Park Board, the rabid Park Board lovers, supporters of why an elected Park Board is so important. We've got a dog visitor, everybody.
I know, he was
for those who aren't
feet,
viewing us.
That's Calvin.
Very cute. So that movement's happening. I've seen Bill Thielman who ran under Team, the other party that was led by Colleen Hardwick, which did ran a disastrous campaign, but it still exists. And this is what you and I have talked about in the past. Okay, we've got one city, which is clearly the dominant super left party right now, getting labor support, lots of money being dumped into one city. So they're going to have cash for an election in the next election. They are propping up Christine Boyle to be the mayoral candidate. And so you've got that sort of vision, cope, left-wing vote, which is generally dominates certainly in the last 20 years in Vancouver politically, the left of center vote, which is pretty much Vancouver. We're slightly left of center as a city. You know, they look at the NDP where they dominate here. And you have ABC, which is probably right of center. And so here's Team now. They ran probably right of center last time, but Bill Thielman, who's an NDPer, is now jumping on this park board bandwagon to support saving the park board because it's anti-democratic. And how, you know, I see the wheel, and I haven't talked to Bill, and he and I are friends, and we've worked together. Bill a lot. And but his wheels, you know, are turning, and he's thinking, this is an opportunity to build up Team and then run a third party. But guess what happens, Jody? We talk Splitsville on the right.
Splitsville, you've taught me so well. I've been to politics university over here.
Here comes Christine Boyle as our next mayor, and I've predicted this before. You know, that she has now this kind of division within the political party, which is always in year one. It's very unusual that a party starts to fall apart in its first year in power.
But you know what, George, I'm going to jump in on how unusual it is for a party to fall apart. This has so many echoes of Vision Vancouver for me. That's what's tweaking for me. Okay. So Vision, obviously the opposite end of the political spectrum, but similar feels to it. It's like all of a sudden, and I'm talking about people, like there are people, names that we say here, and I think it bears being said again. There are people here who work hard that we consider good people and friends of ours. So when we're saying these general sweeping statements, we're talking about the politics. And then the unspun bit is both things can be true. I can be friends with Bill Thielman and wholeheartedly disagree with what he is using as his opportunity. I can fully support Brennan Bastiovansky as a future politician, and also think that the time for Park Board has passed. And I can also look at Ken Sim and be really, 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 really relieved that Kennedy Stewart is not the mayor of Vancouver, but also disagree with the idea of shoving things down the throats of citizens and fellow politicians without so much as having the appearance, the illusion. That's what Vision did to me, that I was like, I'm out. When you're all of a sudden making a decision behind that door and walking out here and telling everybody what's happening, that's not cool. You have to at least have the discussion, even if you have the power to change it all. It's kind of like the respect and the promise and the trust that comes with having power of attorney over someone else. Like if I'm your power of attorney, George, I can sell your house out from under you, but you trust me not to do that. That's why you picked me to be your power of attorney. I look at my politicians and I ask of them to do with my money, my tax dollars, the best for me and for my fellow citizen. Sometimes I'm going to have some more pain to take care of the people who don't have what I have. And I sign up for that. And I vote for, if I vote for a Ken Sim over a Christine Boyle, I'm making a decision as to how my tax dollars are spent. And does that mean I like them as a person, or we can hang out or go for coffee or have a beer? You know what? Different subjects. So when we're having, I think this is really foundational for our podcast. What makes us different from others is we talk about the spin that we're watching happen, and also what is actually happening. Right. And so first year, what is happening is a lot of people who aren't nerds in this are looking at this going, so you're just doing stuff now? You're just going to do stuff? Like Ken Sim needs comms people.
He just got another guy. He's had a lot of them. I think
who did he get?
Your point on the Vision thing is interesting, though. Your comment about Vision there, I think, and how, and in the end, actually, Park Board is what destroyed Vision in a lot of ways. It was because of that, a lot of the nightmare. But Vision wasn't willing to make this, as you said earlier, ever to make this move to they wanted to, they didn't do it. And I think for exactly the reason that Ken Sim will soon find out is that this could not only legally, potentially, if the Park Board decides to pursue some kind of legal avenue, which now we're looking at what the Surrey Police versus RSPP.
Oh my God, how much is that going to cost us all?
And going on forever. But just just from a political and communications challenge for him, and the flip-flopping and the party being internal. This is the kind of stuff I think Vision was also seeing, where let's just strangle the park board and try to slowly kill it, as opposed to closing it down, because they probably had the same problem with their commissioners that would have done the exact same thing as these ABC guys, and they would have bailed and then denounced the party. And then we are in this situation where we have division within a party, which makes people go, if the mayor can't keep his own party together, how do we expect him to keep our city together? I mean, that's kind of why you fail in politics when you're a leader.
I got a question for you. Park board, when we talk about the commissioners not making a whole lot of money, the general managers and the non-elected parts of the park board make more. There's money to be saved.
The park board GM makes $280,000 a year.
Yeah. So
here's another thing.
There would be saving there.
From an intrigue point of view. Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
An intrigue thing. I'm just wondering if there are certain people who are elected that are telling Ken, get rid of the park board. Great idea. And then he does it, destroys him politically in the back, and then they slip up. They get up to become the mayoral candidate.
Are there backstabbers in the same party, George?
There always are. That's politics. It's not fun, but that's how you rise up in politics. You have to make that decision. And when is that moment right? Well, this is a beginning, potentially, depending on how Ken Sim handles this, of the end of Ken Sim as a leader of this party. And I would know there are a few people within that party that would love to be that in his job. And we will see them. And I can bet they were like, great idea.
Position themselves. So really? When you say it could be,
you won't have any problem with this.
Yeah, right. It could be the end, or the park board could be so incredibly unpopular, as per Jordan Armstrong's poll on Twitter, but that Mario Canseco and maybe Shachi Curl will do it, Angus Reid, to find out that people are so pissed. And that, because I'm telling you, I don't need to tell you, you were working the radio as much as I was working the radio. Every time I'm like, park board, people are like, calling, first time caller, long time listener.
Yeah, that's right.
People are pissed at the
you
fact
also
that they
know,
can't access their parks, so they're going down to their parks, and it's restrictive and yet costs more. Now you have to pay 3 hours. And
your hot dog story,
my
right?
hot dog story. What? Google Jody Vance hot dogs. Brace yourself.
Okay.
It's a goddamn hot dog.
I will say though, and you're right, that even though the public support might be there, all the other things that we've talked about today, those little things that kind of pick at the leadership and the NBC, that the flip-flopping, the party, division internally, the fact that team and have this opportunity to start building their own base of
the
people
job vacancies. That's the thing that gets me, is the job vacancies. Like,
which one?
It seems like every day there's somebody who's like, no, like, what's going on in there?
Maybe we should apply. Wouldn't they love to have us on board?
Could you imagine team, George and Jody running the comms
directors
department?
Of communication?
Yeah, just the two, you and me and Amanda.
I'll share a $280,000 salary with you.
Sure. If we can work from home, I'm in. Remote
No,
work.
Jody for mayor, right? Isn't that what we're doing?
Oh.
On that note, let's get out of here.
Imagine this in a council meeting. No.
Well, it's just doing half an hour for us is a long time to sit still for you and me. But
God, no. But it is. I mean, and we're at the half an hour mark. We got to go, George. People are wanting to follow you on social media. Where do they find you?
George_Affleck.
George_Affleck. I'm at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance on your social media, on Twitter and Instagram. And now I'm on Blue Sky.
You are.
I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Alignable. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok.
Yeah, that's the one I didn't know you were talking about. Blue Sky. Yeah. I thought you were on a new network or something. You're working somewhere else. I'm like, how many jobs do you have?
No. Actually, no. I'm keeping my jobs nice and tight. I'm gonna have a little Christmas holiday time. Are we gonna do our podcast all through Christmas? I think we are, aren't we?
No,
we're not.
We'll see how
the 22nd.
The
21st will be our last one. What's that?
Yeah. We'll see unless Park Board goes crazier. If there's reasons to talk.
Well, we could
talk.
do it when Brian and I come over for dinner on the 29th. When you and Amanda are making us our lamb and our sticky toffee pudding.
We could do a fun one, little short one.
We could do one with a couple of glasses in it.
I like it.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later.